Hello everyone, it's me, Quietus, and today I'm going to finally fulfill my long-awaited promise of making a hero guide. Now obviously the first hero we'll be covering is the one and only Shaolin. Alright, so the goal of this guide is to have it be as packed as possible with information on how to play this hero, from everything such as his basic moveset all the way to the more advanced information. I feel it is pretty important to mention that Shaolin has a pretty high learning curve compared to the rest of the cast. It is not a hero that can be picked up and played successfully right off the bat. He has a lot of horrendous matchups, which we will cover later in the video, that can negate everything this hero can do fairly easily. Performing well with this character essentially boils down to how well you can make reads and adapt to your opponent. Bad reads and mistakes will be punished greatly. With that being said, this video may turn out to be pretty lengthy, but I will of course provide timestamps for you to easily skip the information you don't need and watch the segments you do need. But before we begin the video, we have a sponsorship to talk about. The BenQ company recently reached out to me and sent me one of their ScreenBar lamps to review. Basically, this is a light that can be attached to the top of your monitor and will illuminate your desk area. This product is super useful for saving space on your desk rather than having a large tabletop lamp taking up room on your setup. The lamp fits very nicely on top of your monitor and shines perfectly down at your tabletop surface. The brightness and hue of this lamp can be adjusted by tapping the touch sensor buttons located at the top of the bar. There's also a button for automatically adjusting the brightness based upon the lighting of your room. The lamp is also powered by a USB port, so it won't take up an outlet to turn on and use. I've been using this product for a couple of days now for both when I'm gaming or using my PC to edit or watch videos, and I'm really satisfied with this lamp because, as you can probably see, my desk is quite crowded and doesn't have a lot of space for a regular lamp. So thank you to BenQ for sponsoring this video and sending me a free lamp. If you want to check this product out, the links to do so will be in the description. There's also a version of this lamp made for laptops as well. Highly recommend this product, so make sure to check the links in the description. Now let's get into the video. Alright, so to start off, it only makes sense to start with the basics for newer players. So if you're already aware of Shaolin's moveset, feel free to skip to a later segment of the video. So getting into his moveset, Shaolin has, of course, basic neutral heavies from all directions that deal 24 damage from all sides. The speed also remains the same from all directions, clocking in at 800 ms each. He also has standard light attacks at 500 ms each. The top one deals 12 damage, and for the sides, if you land the first one, you can get 2 more in the same direction for a total of 17 damage. Shaolin also has a 3-hit zone attack that starts off at 600 ms. Second hit is 500 ms, and the third hit is 400 ms. Each hit deals 12 damage each, and you can cancel in between each hit as well. If the second hit of the zone lands, then the last hit of the zone will be confirmed. However, this is not the same for the first hit. There really isn't much of a reason to use this zone as an offensive tool. It's much better as an option select, which is when you parry an attack with the zone input. This will parry the attack if it is let go, but throw a zone if it is feinted. This will negate a feint guard break. This can be countered by the opponent feinting and parrying the option select. Shaolin also has a running kick that is inputted by pressing your guard break button while running. If this hits, you can land your full 3-hit light combo, but it has to be from where the enemy is not guarding. If they have a reflex guard, then this does not apply. This move can also wall splat, confirming a heavy attack. Shaolin also has a side dodge attack that deals 16 damage and comes from the opposite side of the dodge and cannot be feinted or chained. This is strictly for defensive purposes only. Using it as offense is a free parry for the opponent. You can also perform a dodge forward heavy attack for 24 damage that can be feinted, and is great for closing the gap between you and the enemy. Shaolin also has an infinite chain, which can either be started with a single light or heavy. To keep this chain going forever, you need to alternate between light and heavy. Doing 2 lights or 2 heavies in a row will end the chain. The heavy finisher is 600 ms, dealing 30 damage, while the light is 500 ms and deals 14 damage. Shaolin can also perform a deflect by dodging into an attack right before it hits and pressing heavy. This move deals 20 damage, has hyper armor, and counts as a heavy chain starter. Now the most important part of this kit is definitely his chi stance. This stance is entered by either holding light if you wish to enter with a light, or heavy if you wish to enter with a heavy. This can be accessed from all attacks with the exception of finishers, side dodge attacks, and his zone attack. Shaolin gains access to numerous moves while in this stance, but the con is he cannot block in this state. The first move Shaolin can do is a sun kick by pressing your guard break button, which is 500 MS and confirms a light attack for 14 damage. This move can also optionally be followed up into an unblockable heavy for 30 damage, or a sweep which will knock the enemy down. However, these alternative options are not guaranteed after the kick and can be punished. Shaolin can also do his unblockable heavy straight from the chi stance by doing a heavy from the top. It's important to note that if you enter your chi stance with a heavy, you will have to release the heavy button to perform a heavy. The same goes for light as well. If you do a heavy from the sides, however, Shaolin will do a heavy that deals 28 damage and cannot be dodged by the opponent. Doing a light attack from chi stance from the top will perform a 500 MS top attack that stuns the opponent. Doing this from the sides will do a 700 MS attack that does not stun the opponent. These light attacks can be used as a crushing counter, which essentially means you can counter heavies and light attacks by pairing with a light. This is to compensate for Shaolin's inability to block in a state. Since the side lights are slower, they also have a larger window for the crushing counter to trigger. If you press the emote button, you can do an emote in chi stance, which won't do anything except maybe cause your opponent to jizz in your face. In a later segment of the video, we discuss how to properly take advantage of Shaolin's chi stance and all of his other moves, so stay tuned for that. Next, we are going to cover the max punishes for Shaolin. A standard heavy parry will grant you your full 3-hit light combo for 17 damage. However, you can alternatively opt to go for top light into chi stance to continue your offensive pressure. This option is preferred despite the slightly less confirmed damage. A light parry will give you a regular heavy attack from any direction. Doesn't matter what, they all do the same damage. For an out of stamina parry, you can do a top light into heavy into another light for 48 damage, but the punish is unsafe, meaning if the opponent gains their stamina on a wake up, they can guarantee a guard break on you. However, you can continue your chain to prevent this. The max punish for an out of stamina throw is light, heavy, into light. However, you have to make sure you do not change your guard before hitting the light attack button, or else it will cause an early wake up. If you parry a light while out of stamina, you get a free top light. If you GB an opponent while you are out of stam, you can get a top light, or you can opt to throw them to a wall, which can confirm a heavy if you're at the right distance. If you throw an opponent out of stamina while you are also out of stamina, you can get a heavy from any direction. Revenge auto parry punish is a top light into heavy into light, same as out of stam parry punish. Now that we know what Shaolin can do moveset-wise, we need to cover exactly how to properly utilize all the tools given to us. This section of the video will offer tips and strategies to better understand when and what to use, while also teaching you how to be as unpredictable as possible. For starters, you don't want to just jump into a fight wailing away at your opponent without first testing the waters and observing how they respond to you. What I'd recommend doing at the start of the fight is to feint a lot and not commit to too many moves until you have an understanding of how your opponent will react. Especially when you enter chi stance, it's important to take note of how the enemy responds under the pressure of the stance mix-up. Do they dodge a lot? Do they stand still? Do they roll? These are all important factors to consider when deciding what moves you need to use in order to counter the opponent. If you suspect they are going to dodge, do an undodgeable. Think they'll stand still, throw out a kick. Will they dodge attack? You can choose to either attempt to crush and counter it, or you can just chew an unblockable because you'll still catch it and counters two options at the same time. However, heroes with a fast dodge attack like Shaman or Tiandi will likely beat out your undodgeable, so you're going to have to use your crushing counters in order to punish that in most cases. Speaking of crushing counters, Shaolin can essentially utilize his chi stance as a recovery cancel to punish heroes who are dodging your attacks mid-chain. But again, this strategy will only work on heroes with slower or delayed dodge attacks because the time it takes to flow the chi stance after an attack is just too long to punish fast dodge attacks like a Black Pride could with his bulwark recovery. It may take some time to be able to consistently do this, but the best way to learn is to simply watch your opponent while attacking instead of just mashing your infinite combo and doing nothing really. When you see them dodge out of your combo, hold your heavy or light button depending on what your last attack was, and perform the crushing counter in the direction of the attack. Once again, this will likely take time to get used to doing, but after a fair bit of practice, it'll become second nature. Next, I'd like to cover some alternative ways to enter chi stance as Shaolin. Shaolin can still enter his stance after whiffing an attack, which can be done by moving backwards while throwing a heavy or a light. It is a decent alternative option to entering your stance because your attack cannot be parried if whiffed from the proper range. One issue though is that Shaolin's light attacks have a lot of forward tracking, meaning you have to be pretty far back in order to whiff them. His heavies, on the other hand, are definitely a much better option for whiffing attacks because his heavies do not have as much forward tracking as lights and can be whiffed at almost any distance. Your chi stance attacks also have a really good range, so the distance created between you and your enemy will likely not cause too much of an issue. Although whiffing your attacks is a good option, it can still be countered relatively easily. This is where unpredictability is your key to success. A lot of times heroes will try to hit you with a dodge forward light when they realize you are whiffing your attacks. To answer this, you can flow into your chi stance and perform a crushing counter. This can also be relatively inconsistent depending on the speed of the enemy's attack and how early they do it, but it is something to keep in mind. Another way of remaining unpredictable is to follow up a whiffed heavy with a light instead of just flowing your chi stance every time. This can easily throw your opponent off and adds another layer of guessing that the enemy will have to deal with and adapt to. Whiffing your attacks is best used against opponents who really make it difficult to get into your main infinite combo. If you find that they block all your lights consistently, counter your heavy attempts, then consider this as an option. Alright, so a little tip for the sun kick in top chi light. If you enter chi stance and the opponent dodges before you even input anything, you can guarantee a kick. This is because they'll be stuck in their dodge recovery, allowing you to bash them without them being able to dodge it a second time. Entering your stance and just waiting to see if they do an empty dodge to confirm a kick will once again add another layer of depth to your mix-ups, which the opponent will need to adjust to. Now, not only do they have to read whether you're going to kick or not, they also have to read when you're going to kick, which is very important. And for the top chi light, a lot of Shaolins you see will throw this and just do a guard break after, hoping it lands. This can work sometimes, however it's what your opponent will likely be expecting, so it's important to switch it up. For example, instead of doing a guard break, you can opt to do either a light or heavy. Since they're stunned, the indicator will be hidden from them, so they're going to have to read the animation or guess the direction the attack is coming from. My favorite thing to do, however, is hit them with a stun light and don't follow up with anything. A lot of the time, players will immediately throw a light after being stunned in an attempt to interrupt the guard break they are expecting. Sometimes they'll even do a dodge attack. This is a free parry. This should hopefully cover this segment, and if you haven't already picked up on it, the main goal of Shaolin is to keep your opponent clueless as to what you're going to do next by introducing as many variables to your playstyle as possible. So this part of the video is basically going to be about how Shaolin performs in 1v1s and what to look out for. Essentially, Shaolin's number one counter is defense. Shaolin doesn't really have a reliable way to get into his mix-up when your opponent is taking advantage of all their defensive tools such as option selects or whatever niche moves that hero may have. One example of a hero that just absolutely stomps Shaolin will be someone like Conquer. His ability to defend himself so well just makes getting an opportunity to attack extremely difficult and tedious. And keep in mind, this is all going to depend on the skill level of your opponent. The Conqueror may fighting me very well be horrible and you destroy him, however this is assuming your opponent has to optimally utilize the hero's kit to its full potential. When going against an opponent who is very heavy on defense, all you really can do is be very patient and try to bait as many counters as you can. I know this isn't necessarily the best advice, but if I'm being completely honest, there's not much this character can do in that situation. Now we're finally going to be moving into the 4v4 section of the video, beginning with my recommendations for the best perks and feats this hero has to offer. Beginning with the tier 1 slot, we have two options that I think are a viable pick, that being Stealth and Cheat Trap. Stealth will essentially hide you from the radar and hub, making it a lot more difficult to be discovered. This comes in handy for situations like needing to sneak into the enemy zone without them seeing you. Another use for this feat is making it so the player cannot lock onto you with a projectile, essentially causing them to miss basically every time if you're just walking to the side. This will make avoiding projectiles much easier, especially ones that are thrown off screen and you cannot see. Now for my second pick for the tier 1 slot, we have Cheat Trap. Cheat Trap is a placeable trap with a decent sized radius which will permanently reveal whoever walks on its position until they die. What's interesting about this feat is that once you place it, it'll stay there until the very end of the game or until you place it in a different spot. It also has no limit to how many players it can mark, meaning you can just set it and forget it. What makes this such a decent contender for the tier 1 slot is the fact that you can literally just place this on the enemy spawn point and they will instantly be marked on respawn. If you place it properly, it can get all 4 spawn points for your enemies and there's nothing they can do about it unless they're using the stealth feat. Other than that, this feat will essentially give you full sight on everybody in the lobby right until the very end of the match. But if you're playing a mode where this doesn't apply, or you're just really lazy like me and never feel like placing it, then stealth would be the better option. Now for your tier 2 slot, I would 100% advise choosing Shaolin's Blink feat. This feat will allow you to teleport to an enemy you're locked onto and get a free sun kick. Sun kick here functions exactly the same as a normal one, that being guaranteed light and the option to sweep or unblockable heavy. This feat is just my favorite of his because it makes it really difficult to run away from Shaolin and can be very clutch for catching someone right before they revive or something like that. Remember though that this is dodgeable, but regardless is still a really solid feat to pick as a tier 2. For the third slot, I would definitely use Invigorate. What it does is heal yourself and any nearby allies for a small portion of health anytime you attack from cheese stance. The effect still works even if the attack is blocked or parried, making it a very useful tool for teamfights and just getting that extra bit of healing. One interesting interaction with this feat is that you can use your Blink feat while in cheese stance, which will count as a cheat attack, allowing the Invigorate to heal you. It's a small tip, but I thought it was interesting enough to be mentioned. Remember though that you cannot use this Blink feat in cheese stance while you're doing it in mode for whatever reason. For your tier 4 feat, I think the best choice is the Blessed Protection feat. It'll allow you to teleport to an ally anywhere on the map, making it good for getting to an endangered ally immediately. The cooldown on this feat is also really decent for a tier 4, so I definitely opt this over the other two, especially against Slippery. If I see you using Slippery in a match, you're getting teabagged. It's really bad. Now it's getting the perks. For the perks, I'd simply just go Devour, Headhunter, and Remedy. The other perks really don't help him much for how he plays, so just getting that extra healing is really the best thing you can do for him. For the executions, the Helicopter Strike is the fastest one, and Tianing is the slowest. However, technically the Halloween event execution is the slowest one, but that is limited time, so you may not have that option. Alright, so one thing I don't think is talked about much in the front community is how to properly set up ganks to avoid feeding the least revenge and killing the enemy as quickly as possible. I know most people probably aren't going to really care for this portion of the video, but if you have a coordinated teammate and you don't want to get 2v1 by the dude gave revenge 7 times, then this will be valuable information. His first ganking tool will be a standard sun kick. Once you land it, it'll allow an attentive teammate to confirm an attack, preferably a heavy if quick enough. However, the better option for ganking would be with your triple lights. Now what I didn't mention yet is that the 2 confirmed follow-up flights after the first hit can be delayed for a pretty large amount of frames. If max delayed, then your opponent will be hit stunned for the entire period, allowing your teammate to land a heavy. It's going to take practice and also requires a teammate who's in on it too, so if you play with someone, I highly recommend you guys learn how to set up ganks for the best experience. Shaolin is a somewhat decent team fighter. He's not meta by any means, but I do think at minimum he's very fun to play in a team fight. Essentially what it boils down to is 1v1ing the person you're locked onto and trying to crush and counter any attempts that the other enemy makes to hit you out of your combos. When crushing countering external attacks, all you need to do is release or press the light attack button in the direction the attack is coming from. It's pretty simple, but felt like I should at least mention. Also, one thing to remember is that Shaolin's crushing counters can be target switched, so if you want to hit the other person with it, you can. Shaolin's Sun Kick will also be a useful tool to interrupt the enemy's punish on your teammate. Its speed and long range can really come in clutch for saving an ally if need be. So if I haven't made it obvious enough, the role Shaolin plays in a 4v4 mode such as Dominion is basically team fighting and setting up ganks. That about covers everything I intend to do in this big penis guide. Remember, this is my first guide video, so feedback is greatly appreciated. Tell me if I left something out you felt was important, and so on. With that being said, leave a like, subscribe, join the Discord, and become monkey.